Good morning, good morning. It's Wednesday Wisdom, and we're here with the beautiful Stephanie Pinto. How are you this morning, Stephanie? It's been one of those funny mornings for me.
I actually went out for my morning walk and the whole family decided to come. So the kids scooted and went on their bikes, and me and my husband walked around the park and then came back just in time for this. So it's been nice.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Isn't it nice to be able to do stuff before school?
Yeah, it just takes away that rush of like, we get up, we just have enough time to get dressed and ready and eat. And like now we have, on the mornings that we're up earlier, then even just myself, I like to have a bit more time, and then I'm less frazzled, and that flows out onto everyone else.
Yeah, that's nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to extend. We've got a whole heap of topics that we could talk about, but when my team said, what are we going to talk about today, I said, why don't we just extend where we were going last time?
Yep.
So we were talking about neurodivergent children, and so today we're going to be talking about emotions and behaviour. Yeah. And this is going to be really good for me because, there's so much out there that, you don't know what's out, like what's right and what's not. And like even neurodivergent is relatively a new labeling in a way, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. So we should probably go through that and what that means and what that refers to, and why, I think a bit of why that term has come, and the term neurodivergent and neurodiverse, and why those terms have come out. And I think that'll be helpful for people to have a bit more awareness and knowledge around, people who are wired differently, which is just the way I describe it, because they're not less, they're different. is what we say.
Yeah. And I actually really love the word neurodivergent, to tell you the truth, because it makes me think of that movie Divergent and Insurgent, and like there was a series of 3 movies. Have you ever seen it?
No, but I've heard of them.
Yeah, and Divergent was the first one, I think. I'm not sure, but anyway, what it was all about was that there was different groups of people after some sort of big catastrophic thing that actually didn't happen, but they all thought it did, or it did, but there was other stuff going on, and there was all these groups, and so one of them were the like the active people, and they protected everyone and the wall, and then there was these other group that did judged and made the decisions, and then there was another group that served and blah blah blah, and Divergents were the ones that like didn't fit any group, so they were chosen. And like if you were Divergent, the powers that be were like trying to kill all the Divergents, because the Divergents had all of the different assets or different attributes, and so they were seen as a threat. And so neurodivergent to me feels like a superpower,
That's really cool. I literally just quickly wrote down those 2 words that you just used, having different assets and attributes, because oh my gosh, like if we back up, thinking about neurodivergent, neuro means obviously the brain, and diverse is a variety or a range. It's not just this part of humanity, or this way of thinking and this way of being, that it's including or considering the range and normalizing that there is a range, there is a spectrum, there is this diversity amongst all of us. And why do I think this is really the way that at least in the parenting space, but also the educational space for our kids, is really honoring and accepting neurodiverse people simply
Yeah.
because we are all wired differently and we all have different personalities,
Yes.
feelings, ideas, preferences, and things like that. Like, you know, as basic as I don't like tuna or tomato and my husband does, like we are all, you know, even at that basic level, it doesn't mean
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
lower or I'm less than because
Yeah.
I don't fit his mold, you know, or something that maybe a lot of people might like chocolate and one person doesn't. It doesn't mean they're weird or, you know, we joke about it, but but
It's so true, right? Yeah.
yeah, I think those words that you brought up, the attributes or the assets are different, and we can, yeah, like I said before, different, not less. Like
Yes.
we need to stop looking at, for example, autistic kids or autistic people or people with ADHD as less than or damaged or, you know, not as intelligent. You know, they are.
Which is really interesting that because those labels are definitely
Yeah.
out there in society, right? But actually, when you know, now that this language has come about, we can go back in history and look at people like Steve Jobs, for example, and Einstein, and, you know, like absolute geniuses
Yeah.
that we can all go back and go, yeah, maybe if those labels were there, you know, like back then,
Yeah.
these people, you know, like would have had been on that spectrum, right? Because so focused and, you know, come down, in my language, come down onto the planet to just get something done, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's very interesting because you know, very from the little interactions that I've had in society with neurodivergent people, you know, a lot of them have got, you know, a real focus on one thing, you know, like depending on the spectrum or whatever. But yeah, it's very interesting.
I think I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I don't want to butcher it, but I'm not going to say it properly. And I should have looked it up before we talk, but there's something called I think it's the double empathy problem. I'm going to like look it up really quickly.
Yeah. I'm going to have a look on Facebook and see if we've got anyone here.
What it essentially describes is that if we as neurotypical people can look at autistic people and think, wow, they have no empathy for, you know, other people's emotions or other people's preferences and likes and dislikes, like they want to talk about what they want to talk about, and they're very tunnel vision, and they're in their own world, and they're not really social to my expectations or to how we do things, you know, that sort of reciprocity and things like that in language and in conversation. And the double empathy problem, I guess, explains that if we flip that, an autistic person can look at us and think, I have my autistic way, the way my brain likes to communicate, and the way I like to explain things, and the way I like to think about things and conceptualize them, and the way I like to explain or to ask questions. Sometimes it's not with my words, it's with my behavior or with my eyes or with, you know, some other method. And it doesn't suit, just because it doesn't suit the vast majority of, you know, the people in the world, which is the neurotypical people. We're the majority. Just because it doesn't suit you, then I'm the one in the wrong, and you have no empathy for the way I like to communicate, which isn't for example, to look in your eyes. Like that can be.
I was actually just yeah.
And we expect it, and we think you need to give us eye contact. Like I remember, so I worked at Aspect, which is Autism Spectrum Australia, for 7 years. So my entire caseload was autistic kids and adults. And this was probably like 10-ish years ago. And I remember creating goals on our little goal plan with the family goal plan, around increasing their eye contact and like doing things to get that and rewarding that, and like really conditionally giving them rewards and like things that they liked, or, you know, activities when they gave me the icon. It was really shaping. It was like behaviorism at its finest. And so we thought the vast majority, the neurotypical people, feel like it is polite and respectful to look at someone when you're talking to them. And if you're not doing that, then that means you're being rude and disrespectful and impolite, and you're not listening. Actually, a lot of autistic people listen and hear and take in and process information so much better when they are looking around and when they're doing something, and when they're not actively having to look in your eyes, because that we know from autistic adults that can be stressfully overwhelming to their nervous system to have to maintain that eye contact. Anyway, very interesting.
I've got to share a couple of things, and so one of them is I'm just thinking about the Indigenous cultures where it's actually rude to look at somebody in their eye, right? And so yeah, absolutely. And so you know, and then the you know, the broad spectrum of society goes, oh, they're rude because they don't look at you or whatever. That was happening way before all of this sort of came into play. So really interesting. And you know, I just looked at this because, you know, the more we talk, the more I go, I've got those symptoms, or not symptoms, but those traits and attributes of my own. Yeah. And, you know, I'm sure that a lot of people can go into that space. One of the things that from an energetic empath's point of view is when I'm looking you directly in the eyes, I'm actually connecting with your energy. And so I'm reading you unconsciously because I'm connecting with you and your energy. So if I want to be speaking, and I can feel myself doing it right now, if I want to speak from my own space, I actually need to look away from you so that I can grab the information and not be distracted by your energy field.
Oh, it's almost like you need to disconnect for a moment.
Yeah, so that I can be back in my own bubble and connect the wisdom and the information from myself, rather than being distracted by your reaction to it or the information that would be coming from you to me. So if I'm reading you, I look at you. Actually, I don't, like if I'm doing an intuitive reading, I don't look at you, I just tune into your energy. But because then I can be distracted by your consciousness as well. So it's a similar, yeah. And so I would say that actually that's potentially one of the reasons. It's a distraction because, you know, overstimulation, and so needing to be in their own bubble, you know, like to be able to access the information that's required. The second thing that came up for me, or the third thing, is, you know, one of the things that I teach is self-responsibility, self-assessment, self-regulation, you know, like, and so many of us women in particular feel drawn to save and nurture and serve and, you know, like to be always in that active role of, you know, like giving and giving and giving. And we actually don't allow that individual that we're giving to be in their own sovereignty, because here we are, we're being conditioned to, you know, we've got to serve, we've got to give, we've got to act, you know, like mollycoddle someone. But what about giving them their power back and allowing them to be in their space, right? And so if we're all here as individual, isn't this cool that it went this way? Because if we're all here as individual beings, then we've got our own agenda and we've got our own conditions that we're accessing and moving through and releasing and clearing and moving, you know, into something different. And if the normal, typical person is trying to save you from that emotion or save you from, you know, like, then you're not able to grow in your own way. So to have that little barrier of, I'm not empathizing with you because you've got this, right? Like, you know, like feel that emotion and allow it to happen, but I'm not going to interfere with that by crying or giving you a tissue or telling you how bad it is and I'm so sorry you experienced that. Like, give them the space to feel it by themselves without having to energetically be coupling with them and hooking in.
Oh.
I know, really cool, isn't it? So I'm just looking at that from a different perspective.
Yeah, huge.
So these beautiful human beings are holding space for themselves and holding space for other people. You be you, I'll be me.
It's so, I feel like for so many parents and just people in general, it's hard to let another person, like I even think about me and my husband and then me and my kids. It's hard for me not to want to be the helper and the doer and the fixer and the swooper-innerer. And what you're saying is so right. Like, I have to have this separation, which is not a cold-hearted, I don't care, like, you know, that's
No.
or you're about to hurt yourself. Well, you know, it's not that, but it's allowing that other person, like you said, to stand in their sovereignty and make their own decisions and have the emotions that they're having. We know that neurodivergent kids, especially, you know, kids with ADHD can have really big emotions. I just have been speaking to a friend who's an ADHD expert, and big emotions and really impulsive behaviors and things like that. And of course, like we never say to just let them go and damage stuff and hurt people and like have no boundaries, and that's unsafe behavior. But we don't have to swoop in and like shield or like stop, suppress the emotion, fix the emotion. You know, if our kids are letting out, for example, anger and releasing that because they didn't get something they wanted or something didn't work out or they expected one thing and another thing happened, it's okay to be disappointed and really frustrated. Like, you know, to be like, no, it's, you can, you know, it's not a big deal. He didn't mean it. It was an accident. Don't worry. It's fine. No, it's not fine. I'm really upset about it. So like we can allow it. It takes that, it's hard, but it takes some intention and some awareness of.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'd love to go into that a little bit if we can, because I think I've shared with you before, you know, when my daughter was really young, she had a lot of anger, you know, in her. And I was a single mom, and how do I sort this out? And she said she didn't, like, she'd just go from I'm fine to losing the plot and didn't know the difference, you know, didn't feel it. So she was only, you know, maybe 5 or something when we started recognizing this. And so we had this thing. I said, you know, are you okay if I say, hey, I can feel it coming? Can you feel that coming? And I sort of taught her to feel when the emotion was sort of rising in her. And so we had these key words, right? So when she would feel it coming, she would say, I need some time out. And I knew to back off, and she would go to a room and she'd come back when she was ready. If I felt it first and she hadn't, my key words were, do you want to go there? Because she knew that I would win. And so, you know, like we had this thing, you know, like, do you want to go there? She'd know that means I'm just about to lose it myself, you know. And so it worked extremely well. And her level of understanding her anger now is really, you know, like really quite heightened through that process. And so share with me some of that, like, because you're right, like they're, you know, people that are experiencing children that have got neurodivergent attributes that are having these extremes, and in the shopping centres, and, you know, like, and we're dealing with all of our, like, you know, our own emotions of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be judged, and I don't, you know, like, I'm trying to do the shopping or whatever it might be. How do you manage that, and what are some of the emotions that you experience with talking to the parents that you're working with?
Yeah. A lot of embarrassment and shame and guilt comes from when our kids are not meeting our expectations, they're not behaving the way we would like, or they're being uncooperative, or they're like melting down in the middle of woolies. And the amount of judgment we feel from other parents who, I'm like, I want to even say 100% of parents will have experienced their child having a meltdown or having some big reaction and, being rude and things like that. They will have experienced that, maybe not in the middle of woolies, but all of us have experienced when our kids have those big challenging moments. And in the moment, we forget that we've all been there, and that these people, some of them are judging, like some of them are, I wouldn't let my kid speak to me like that or do that. And there will be others who are going, oh my God.
I know. My stepmother used to say to me, my mother-in-law used to say to me, the ones that are judging don't have kids. The ones that are empathizing are the ones that have got children.
It takes, I think, intentional awareness and this like practice, as in, not that you practice it, but it becomes a practice of, so almost like surrendering to the moment. we can't control anyone but ourselves, especially in these big emotionally charged moments. I can't control my child. I could offer her 20 chocolates right now and I'd still get it. Like, if we can almost, I think I like the word yield a little bit better. If I can yield to the situation, which is my child is not coping, they have reached their limit over something, and this could be a teenager or it could be our partner, like they are having this moment. They are not choosing to erupt and look like a teary, snotty mess in front of people or at home. They're not choosing to be out of control and have their nervous system in that fight or flight state. They're not choosing to say hurtful things. Like, they would never say this if they were in their logical, rational, calm, regulated, body. And so really, it's still a practice, but I try my best to let go of all that other noise and meet my child where they're at. And that, again, it could be my husband or it could be a teenager. Like, meet them where they're at. What do they need in this moment? Dump the bags, or I'm going to be late to that work thing, and support them where they need it, which is usually to hold space for whatever that big angry or upset or disappointed emotion is, or the fear or the anxiety. Hold that space so that can be released, because emotions are energy in motion, right? They feel that coursing through, or you can see it in your child or your partner. They're, you can see the cortisol and the adrenaline. That has to go somewhere. Calm down. It's fine. We'll talk about this later. It's bloody coursing through there.
It's happening right now. It's a physical, natural reaction.
The thing is, unfortunately, a release of emotion, which is healthy and natural, and it's like having emotions is as human as having an elbow or a nose or a heart, but we demonize them and we think they're embarrassing and awkward and a sign of weakness and all of those stories. And unfortunately, society and our culture rewards stoicism and being resilient and not showing emotion and holding it together. Maybe you can let it go when you're at home because you got 3 screaming kids and you just can't do it. But, when you're out and about, everyone is. Like, if you see someone not coping, a lot of the time people, get judged. And it's just, I don't like that. I think we have to just start releasing those stories ourselves and going up to someone if we notice they're having a hard time or they are with their kids, and offering even just a look, like you got this, or like, oh, I feel you. Hey, do you want some help? But just instead of the judgment. Those narratives, I think. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those that actually, I'm just wondering if your book covers this sort of stuff. It does?
Yeah, it does. The second.
Can I say it? It's just come, right?
Yeah, it has. I can show you part of it. I think it's the second chapter is really all about well, it's about emotional intelligence. The first one really is about what lessons do we need to unlearn about emotions, behavior, what that means, our children and their development. Like, we have for too long thought that kids should be able, should be seen and not heard, should be cooperative, should be compliant and obedient. And if they're angry or upset, or that means they're rude and disrespectful. And if they're anxious or fearful, then that means they're weak and soft. Like, we've got a lot of unlearning of that stuff to do, so that we can then actually, hold the space for our kids who have under construction brains and who can't emotional.
I love that, under construction brains. And the other thing I like is that recognition when someone's going off, like, and the simple thing that you just said was they're not coping.
Yeah.
We go straight into someone's going off, oh my gosh, is anyone watching, like all of our own emotions. And it actually, what it reminds me of? Way back, I read like this little thing. I don't know where I got it from, and I've never been able to find it since, but someone saying, we're this cesspit of beliefs and emotions and stuff from our parents and from our friends and from our teachers and blah, 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 blah. And it was saying right at the end, it said, everyone carried on because the boy was crying wolf, but no one actually, am I still on? Yeah, I am. Everyone carried on because the boy was crying wolf, but no one thought about the fact that he was crying. And it was so powerful, right? Like, then people, this person's not coping, right? Like, take that into consideration, stop and pause. This is what's happening. This person's not, like this person, this child, this whatever, is not coping. And so let's stop for a moment and find out why, and give them some space. And
that's the lens through which we have to see any other person and their big emotions, a neurodivergent person, or just our partner, our husband, or kids, is see them through that lens of when they're getting emotionally charged and emotionally heightened, and they're maybe not making sense, or then they're spurting, they're saying things they wouldn't usually say, well, it's always you and you never, when they start, like, when those emotions are running high, that logical, rational, thoughtful part of their brain where they make good decisions and they have access to language and empathy and things like that, all of that kind of drops away, kind of goes offline. So that's the point in arguing back. I'm not saying this as an I'm a perfect person, but I know that if I, when we bring in the knowledge about the brain and the nervous system, that which is what pushes us into this fight, flight, freeze, or flop, that's taking over for us. It's wired in primitively into our system. It's very
absolutely,
to circuit break it. Just now is not the time to have a discussion or to reason or to rationalize or to say, if you keep going, then wait until that emotion and the energy and everything the wave has broken and like passed. Then you're going, when someone is
back down in their body again.
Logical, rational part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, all of that comes back online, and then you will have a much more productive conversation about what happened and what triggered it, and then what can we do next time, because every time I blah blah, or every night for dinner this happens. So just not in the moment, like and I suppose, like, actually looking back, that was pretty intuitive of me to do that with my daughter, right? Because it was a really good, like, it gave us a bridge. And so it was a thing, right? Like, all through her, not teenage years, but like when from 5 to like 10 or whatever, we had a system created
so that she felt heard and she could express herself and she could regulate.
Wow.
And so when you stop for a moment and you go, okay, now, you know, like this has just happened. Let's stop and you know, this is how you were feeling. This is how I was feeling. What can we do just before that? Like what triggered that? You know, like, do we need to have a communication set up where you say, hey, I'm feeling wired or something, or, you know, hey, I'm feeling something. And that's the key for the other person to go, oh, okay, alarm bells, let's get out of the shop, or let's, you know, like find ourselves a space, let's go back into the car and we'll just discuss it, you know, like, so that everyone's feeling heard and understood and you know, validated. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Perfect.
So cool. So I better let you go and get your children to school.
Yeah. Thank you.
And when, like, next Wednesday, your launch will have happened, so we can maybe talk a little bit more about the book.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, people have older or grown kids. Emotional intelligence is for anyone, any age. It's one of the top 10 sought after skills in organizations and teams and workplaces now, according to the World Health Organization, I think. So this stuff, it deepens relationships, it connects people, it gets like we understand our emotions, our triggers, we are a lot less stressed. Everything just flows a lot more when we understand this. I need to do some reading into, I know I read a quick article on EQ, which is, if we think about IQ is the traditional intelligence, EQ is emotional intelligence, SQ is spiritual intelligence, and NQ, as in ENQ, is energetic intelligence.
Oh.
I saw an article on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, because your energy can speak even before you do. You know way more about this than me. But I just looked at those. There was an article that captured emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and energetic intelligence. And I was like, wow. So I'll find that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you yet again, Steph. I love these conversations. And we will catch up next Wednesday. Please jump in and make any comments in the chat, and let us know if you're, you know, hashtag replay, so that we know that you're in there and watching. And we will catch you next Wednesday.
See ya. Thank you.